When you have businesses that are composed of teams that reflect the markets that they're serving, you can have a diversity of perspectives. You can have better innovation, like I said. You remove the groupthink that can happen when you just have one type of person. So for us at Alethea, we see that when you have that inclusion, you have a better diversity of perspectives, better decision making, you have better factors for that. But also what we find is that the innovation is actually quite important. We invest in feminine hygiene products, for example, and in deciding what products to put out into the marketplace, at some point, it was an all-male team that was deciding that in a company. And I remember one day when they came to a meeting and they said, oh, we decided to take away the slimmest sanitary towels. I'm like, why would you do that? Like, yeah, well, we just thought that we could have better if we had the thicker ones. Like, no. Like, think about who's in your team, right, and how you're thinking about serving your population. So any business that wants to be a good business has to think about that diversity of perspectives to better meet the tastes and preferences of their target customers. People often say, oh, is this a charitable thing? Are you really investing? Can you make money? I'm like, it's good business. And it's not just a moral obligation, it's an economic imperative. And so shifting that idea by showcasing our companies that tell that story is important to us, to showcase that we're not just like businesswomen in Africa are not just selling peanuts by the wayside. They are also, and there's nothing wrong with that, but they are also building scalable businesses. And so we tell those stories. We tell the stories of the micro-entrepreneur woman, but we also tell the stories of those women that are scaling and are showing that being gender inclusive is not about charity, and it's not just a moral obligation, it is an economic imperative.
So I want to separate sort of inclusion and belonging, because I do think they're both super important, right? So inclusion are the practices that managers use, their behaviors, that help people feel like they belong or don't belong, right? And so what we're aiming for, I think, I would imagine in most organizations, is satisfying our employees' need to belong, right? Why? I can give you the business case for it, but I can say also that human beings have three fundamental needs. Doesn't matter where you're from, three psychological needs, right? One is a need for autonomy, one is a need for belonging, and one is a need for competence. Let's leave the A and the C aside for a minute and just focus on the belonging. Studies show that when my manager uses more of those inclusion practices, and I'm sure we'll discuss what they are, I feel a greater sense of belonging. When I feel a greater sense of belonging, I'm more engaged at work. When I'm more engaged at work, I'm more likely to show up every day and give it 100% instead of 40, right? I'm more resilient in the face of challenges. And so I just deliver more. So to me, it's a pretty easy calculation that if you want your people to come in every day, give everything they've got to the job, and come back tomorrow and save you the replacement costs, then you're probably going to want to create a sense of belonging and help them meet their need to belong. And you do that through inclusion practices. I don't think performance ever trumps culture. If your culture is important to you and it's strong. I understand that it's an easy thing for me to say, but I think if your culture is important to you and inclusivity and belonging is an important part of your culture because it drives results and it's the right thing to do, whichever argument you want to make, then I don't see how you can promote someone, because as soon as that happens, the rest of the organization says, well, apparently this doesn't matter anymore. And then your culture, it's really hard to make an argument that the culture here is important and it's distinctive.
I really think about it very simply, is what would I do if people came to my house? How would I make them feel comfortable? And if I think about that I'm not going to not have a male or female or I'm not even going to put a gender specific sort of sign on the front of the restroom, right? I'm going to make sure that I'm going to ask them what kind of food they want. So we're going to do that in our restaurant and canteen in the office. I'm going to make sure that if there's somebody who comes to my house and they are less abled in one way, that I make sure that they feel comfortable, right? And that means that we're going to make sure that you can get to the desk and you don't feel that that sticks out or in any other way. And we're going to make sure in any way that people feel comfortable so that they want to work with us, they want to deliver for our clients, and we're going to make sure that that feels good for everyone.